welcome to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. I'm your host, Louis Padian. I hope that you're doing well and are enjoying the podcast and the topics we've covered so far. These podcasts are released every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you are listening to be kept up to date. So in today's episode, it's a bit of a crash course on how to lose weight properly. And the big question is, are you losing weight the right way? And here's how to. There's a few things that I'd work on. So we're going to cover why not using just the scales for weight loss, which sounds a bit counterintuitive, can be the wrong way, how often you should weigh yourself, and other things that you should probably be measuring along the way. So why not just use the scales? And I'll tell you a bit of a story, and it's happened a few times, but one sort of really come to the forefront of my mind. And let's call this client Jill. She's about 50 years old and her aim was to lose weight. And I used to run weight management groups in face-to-face in Leeds. And she turned up and she was wanting to lose some weight, feel a bit better. So after a few sessions had passed, we sat down before we started the session and I basically went, so how are things going? And she went, you know what, I've had a great week. I've been really active, been out with the dogs, I'm feeling a lot better, my clothes are feeling a bit loose, I'm feeling full of energy. And these are all due to the few simple changes we've made over the last couple of weeks with regards to her food and activity and lifestyle changes. She was on about how relationship with her husband had been like, we hadn't argued all week, they had a really positive week, lots of positive experiences. So when it comes to start the session, we said, right, let's just get some metric data, let's step on the scales. I stepped on the scales and she hadn't lost weight. So her world crumbled. As she stepped off, one of the key things I usually do is go, so how was that? And we sort of challenge those automatic negative thoughts that come to the head, and especially when it's maintaining or gaining weight. And she sort of said, wow, what's the point in it? That's really annoying and I'm really disheartened. And I sort of said, well, how about we swap that up and say, you've lost weight this week, but you feel low in energy, you feel you have a poor relationship with food, not as active, you've not had many good experiences, you're constantly bickering with your partner, all these things, not sleeping well, because she was sleeping a lot better. And she said, well, obviously I'd take what's happened right now. So this is where I think it's really important to reflect on what we're trying to achieve here. Yes, we're trying to lose weight on a scale, yes, but there's lots of other things that we should be measuring along that as well. There's lots of things with regards to your quality of life, your overall health and well-being, that are just as important as losing weight, as we want this weight loss to become benefit to our lifestyle and our quality of life rather than be a consequence of it. So what do the scales actually measure? The scales measure your body's relationship with gravity at that moment in time. And that sounds a bit complicated, but it's just basically your snapshot of your body weight at that moment in time. What does your body weight what is it made up of? It contains your body fat levels, your muscle mass, your bones, your energy stores in your body, your organs, water, food being digestive, lots of different things that combine that, all of which fluctuate and can fluctuate day to day. So if you weigh yourself now and then you go to the toilet or you eat a meal, if you go to the toilet, your weighing scale will say that you've lost weight. If you eat a meal, it will say that you've gained weight. That won't be body fat. That will just be changes in other stores within the body. So that's how much it can fluctuate. Weighing scales are a great tool to use over time by looking at the average trend. Snapshots aren't very helpful, as we know they can be manipulated quite easily within a couple of hours. So having a look at average trends over the weeks and seeing what on average is happening to your body weight is definitely a better way to use them. How often should you weigh is probably another question that comes to mind there. And I would say a couple of times a week, depending on your relationship with the scales. Most of my clients probably weigh 3 to 5 times per week. We try and keep the instance very similar. So like first thing in the morning, just have to go into the toilet, wearing the same thing, and sort of getting as many things as consistent as possible, so we know that the only change in variable or limited change in variables are our actual body weight, rather than one day weighing ourselves in our jeans, our trainers and our jacket, and the next day just weighing ourselves in our pants. So those are the things to consider. What other things should you consider? And there's 5 things that I've got that could be beneficial to measure alongside that. And first of all, scales, which we've covered. Second of all, measurements and circumferences of certain areas. So common areas, that would probably be the midsection around the belly button area, around the hips. Might do some around our arms, around our chest, around our thighs, our calves. Usually the waistline's probably one of the bigger ones that we might focus on, because we know there's good correlation between waist circumference and health outcomes long term, and that's where people tend to want to lose weight. So measurements are a great tool at looking at circumferences, again, over time. They won't change that much day to day. They might have slight variations, but again, having looking at trends over time is the best way to look at those. Third of all, progress photos, and this isn't something that I publicly post
but a lot of my clients will work with progress photos. I don't think that we should be posting them on social media as before and after better, before and after worse and better, because I don't think that's the right way to look at it. But it can be a useful thing to consider alongside all these other metrics to see what the visual changes are over time. After that, how clothes are fitting. So as I've mentioned with Jill in the past, how her clothes are fitting were a really, really good way to sort of keep a marker on there. So it could be certain trousers or jeans, could be certain shirts. Those sort of things can be really useful because they don't change. So if they're feeling a bit looser, then we know that probably our body's shrunk a little bit with regards to probably a loss in body fat. But having a look at that over time, and you might have seen in the papers, then she's dealing where someone had lost a significant amount of weight and they'd be standing in with their trousers and the waistlines out here. That's sort of an exaggerated way of showing how those clothes and how they fit can change over time. Key thing would be making sure that the same clothing over time. As we know, jeans, for example, one might be a 32-inch waist one place and a 32-inch waist another place. One could be a loose and one could be tight. They're not very consistent, but having the same clothes, again, with that consistency can be a great way to do it. And then last of all are a few questions that I think allow to, instead of moving from that quantity data where we're looking at facts and figures, some of these might have scales, but looking at the quality data as well. So things are, how is your energy, or how are you feeling day to day? Having a look at that over time. If you're constantly feeling low in energy or really, really miserable, then maybe we might need to up your food a little bit, or have a look at the way that your diet's set up. How is your sleep? Sleep is one of the foundation habits, and I've probably spoken about it so much you're getting sick of it. But I do think if your sleep's in a good place, everything becomes much easier. And we know that there's really good health related outcomes with better sleep schedules and better quality of sleep long term. Energy levels in general, and how's your training? Training is another good one. So it's your physical activity levels or your training, how's that going? If it's through the floor and plummeting, you're not really making any progress, or you're not really enjoying it, one, we might have to look at the form of exercise or activity you're doing, but two, we might have to have a look at how your diet might be impacting on that, or how your overall lifestyle might be impacting on that as well, because we want training and physical activity is an area where we can progress, move forward, and should be a lot of enjoyment. And if they're not there, then potentially we might have to look at things. How are you feeling about your diet? Are you looking forward to your meals? And this is one of the things that people often miss or skip, is that they are on a diet and they hate it. They're dreading each meal, they're not looking forward to it, they're not excited about any of the foods. And that is where I try and change things with my clients. We try to get foods that you enjoy, even if they're quote unquote healthy foods or diet foods that people might throw around, trying to make them exciting and tasty and satisfying as possible for people, so people are looking forward to their food, is a big part to people being able to stick to things long term. If you hate your diet, if you're miserable, if you're on the cabbage soup diet, or if you're on the 16-8 diet where you're fasting all the time and are miserable when you're fasting and then end up binging when you, all these different things, then that's not set up for long-term success and happiness and well-being, which is not what we want to do. So that's something to consider. How are you feeling about your lifestyle? So if you're overactive and underfeeding and you're not really particularly enjoying it, yes, you might be losing weight, but is that going to be something that you can see yourself sticking to long term? Probably not. And a big one as well is stress levels. Managing your stress is hugely important. If you're losing weight technically and restricting food and increasing your activity, technically we're adding stress in there because it's not a comfortable environment for your body to be in. So if we're adding stress on stress, then that's probably not going to be a recipe for a good outcome. So if you've got a high level of lifestyle stress in general at the moment, for a lot of clients might say, well, actually maybe losing weight is not the right time for you right now. Actually, you might have to let this situation resolve or focus on managing that stress a bit better before we start adding more stress in with regards to increasing your activity and reducing your food intake. So a few different things, a few different questions there, take it or leave it, but those are common things that I'll ask clients, get them to reflect on. That could be really useful to measure alongside their circumferences, their weight, how their clothes are fitting, their progress photos. So there's lots of different things that we can use to monitor and manage our weight long term. So those are the sort of things that I think are really, really common or really, really helpful when you're trying to lose weight, maintain that weight loss long term.
So thank you very much for watching or listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. If you'd like access to the free resources mentioned in this podcast, then just drop me a DM on Instagram at Louis Padian Nutrition. If you would be interested in getting healthier and happier in the new year, remember to join the waiting list by clicking the link below. It will be open from Boxing Day and will help you unwrap healthy habits into the new year.